A cold Atlantic wind clawed at the cliffs of County Clare as midnight thunder rolled across the Irish sky. Inside Briarwell Manor, candles sputtered. Shadows danced, and tension hung heavier than the storm clouds above. The estate's owner, the controversial industrialist Lord Seamus Kincaid, had summoned a peculiar group of guests, but none expected the night to end in death. Chapter 1. The Storm over Briarwell. The storm had awakened early that evening, rising from the Atlantic like a crouched creature unfurling its wings. It hurled itself against the cliffs of County Clare with such ferocity that even the seabirds vanished inland. Briarwell Manor, an ancient stone structure perched upon the craggy edge of land, appeared almost defiant, its narrow windows aglow against the waves of wind and rain that battered its walls. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of peat fire, damp wool, and the faint metallic tang that storms often drag inland. Hercule Poirot stepped through the front doors at precisely 7:30. The butler, a stiff-backed gentleman named Declan Ward, ushered him in with the respect afforded to notable guests, though his eyes flashed with a nervous uncertainty that the detective noted at once. Poirot removed his hat carefully, shaking a few droplets of rain from its brim, before smoothing the edge of his iconic moustache with 2 gloved fingers. "Your arrival is most timely, monsieur," Declan murmured. Lord Kincaid insisted on punctuality. Poirot's eyes twinkled. "It is one of the many qualities he and I share, monsieur." The butler said nothing more, though tension radiated from him as if he feared what the night might bring. He guided Poirot into the grand hall, a cavernous chamber with a vaulted ceiling of dark timber beams, a staircase winding upward along the right wall, and portraits staring down through centuries of dust and dignity. A lively fire crackled in the enormous hearth, but the warmth of the fire could not melt the unease that permeated the manor. Poirot took a moment before stepping further. His gaze roamed. The polished floor, gleaming despite the humidity, the flickering gas lamps, the arrangement of rugs, the slight tremor of the window panes under the storm's assault. Every detail fitted into his mental puzzle. Declan cleared his throat softly. "Lord Kincaid awaits in the drawing-room. He was most insistent that you come at once." "And so I shall," Poirot replied. They crossed through the hall and into long, narrow corridors adorned with ancestral tapestries. The walls whispered with the draughts of unseen spaces, the manor's age betraying its hidden chambers and half-forgotten histories. As they walked, Poirot sensed, almost felt, the shifting silence behind closed doors, as though others stood listening, waiting. Finally, Declan stopped beside a tall set of double doors. He knocked once. "Enter!" came the curt command from within. Declan opened the door, revealing a moderately sized drawing-room, lined with bookshelves and maps of the Irish coast. Standing by the window was Lord Seamus Kincaid, a man whose stern build and broad shoulders matched the storm raging outside. His eyes, grey as slate, rested on Poirot with a mixture of irritation and careful respect. "You came," Kincaid said. "Good. I was invited," Poirot replied smoothly. "Though I gather you did not summon me for pleasant company." "No," Kincaid said. "I summoned you because someone intends to ruin me." He crossed the room in 2 strides and poured himself a glass of whisky. Poirot watched carefully. The man's hands trembled, not from age, for he was no more than 50, but from agitation. "Ruin you in what way?" Poirot asked. "By exposing matters better left buried," Kincaid muttered, draining half the glass in one swallow. "Someone has been sending me letters, threats, warnings. I don't scare easily, Poirot, but these are not the ravings of a childish enemy. May I see one such letter?" Kincaid hesitated, then strode to his desk, rifled through papers, and handed Poirot a folded sheet. Poirot recognized the precision of a typewriter immediately. Clean strokes, consistent spacing, no flourishes. The message was blunt. "You will answer for what you did at Glenmore. The night draws near." Poirot lifted his gaze. "Glenmore. I have heard this name whispered." "You've heard plenty whispered, no doubt," Kincaid snapped. "But what happened there is done. Finished." Poirot said nothing. But he noted how Kincaid's jaw clenched, how his shoulders tightened with unspoken guilt. He also noted the slightest sound behind the far door, someone listening. "You invited guests tonight?" Poirot asked. Kincaid snorted. "My wife insisted. Some business acquaintances, people who believe I still hold influence." The contempt in his voice was unmistakable. "They will stay the night because the storm has made travel impossible. But they are of no concern to this matter." "Even so," Poirot said gently, "I find that in such circumstances, people become very much a concern." As if cued by Poirot's words, a thunderclap resounded, rattling the windows. The lights flickered twice. Poirot turned his head instinctively. The manor, for a heartbeat, went entirely dark. In that same instant, a scream tore through the air, high-pitched, terrified, female. The lights snapped back on immediately. Poirot dropped the letter, racing toward the source of the scream. Kincaid followed, whiskey glass still in hand, though now sloshing perilously. The scream had come from the main hall. Poirot arrived first and stopped cold. A maid stood near the fireplace, her hands over her mouth, eyes huge with shock. Several guests, a doctor, a tall man in a state livery, and a young woman clutching notebooks, clustered nearby, whispering in blurred confusion. But Poirot did not look at them. He looked at the body lying on the marble floor. Lord Seamus Kincaid, the whiskey glass shattered beside him. The detective crouched. He touched 2 fingers to the neck. No pulse. The man was dead. Poirot whispered, "Mon Dieu!" The butler and 2 servants rushed in. A flurry of panic erupted, voices raised, cries echoing, accusations already forming. Poirot swept his gaze across the scene, training his mind on every detail. The glass, shattered in several pieces. Kincaid's hand still half-curled, not in a defensive posture. His face, frozen in shock, not agony. And there, on the rim of one shard of glass, a faint trace of silver powder, shimmering beneath the chandelier. Poirot leaned closer. Intriguing! Before he could complete his analysis, the front doors swung open, and a tall, broad-shouldered police inspector stepped inside, shaking rain from his coat. "Inspector Rourke," Declan said with relief. "Thank heavens, something terrible has happened." Rourke took one look at the body and grimaced. "Well now," he muttered, "it appears Lord Kincaid's troubles finally caught up with him." His eyes moved to Poirot and narrowed with suspicion. "And what brings Hercule Poirot to County Clare? Coincidence?" "Hardly," Poirot replied calmly. "I was invited, and as you see, my arrival is most inconvenient, for I must now work in such deplorable weather." Rourke snorted. "Always the humour." Poirot ignored the remark. "Inspector, the victim shows no signs of physical injury, no gunshot, no stab wound, but this powder, here on the glass, may prove significant." Rourke crouched. "Poison? Perhaps." Poirot gently lifted a broken shard with a handkerchief, or perhaps merely residue of something else. The storm rumbled again, shaking the hall. All at once, Poirot straightened. Something was wrong. He scanned the crowd, counting faces carefully. The maid, the doctor, the secretary, The estate manager, yes, all present, all except. Where, Poirot asked slowly, is Lady Rowan Kincaid? A hush fell instantly. Declan paled. She said she was retiring to her music room before the lights flickered. I assumed. Poirot did not wait for the explanation. He strode immediately down the left corridor, turning past portraits and narrow tables until the soft glimmer of the music room door came into view. He pushed it open. Lady Rowan Kincaid sat by her harp, though she was not playing. She was shaking uncontrollably, her emerald dress darkened by wet patches on the hem. Her gloves, white lace, were streaked with mud. Poirot approached carefully. "Madame, forgive the intrusion, but something has occurred." Rowan lifted her face slowly. Her eyes were red, tearful, and filled with something Poirot recognized immediately. Fear. "I heard it," she whispered. "Something terrible. Seamus. Is he?" Poirot nodded once. A small cry escaped her lips, half grief, half horror. She covered her face. Poirot gave her a moment, though he observed everything, her trembling posture, the way her hands clutched her skirt, the smears of earth on her gloves. When she lowered her hands, her voice shook. He accused me earlier of betrayal. I couldn't stand it. I left the house, only for a minute. I needed air. I needed to escape him. "You went outside during the storm?" Poirot asked. She nodded miserably. "The garden? The wind nearly knocked me down. I slipped. That is where the mud came from." Poirot leaned slightly closer. "And why did Lord Kincaid accuse you of betrayal?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Because someone leaked his business documents. He believed it was me." Poirot filed this away. "And was it you?" "No," she said firmly. "I may have disagreed with him. I may have feared him, but I did not betray him." A distant crack of thunder punctuated her statement. Poirot studied her again. He believed her fear, but fear could be genuine, whether guilt existed or not. A shout echoed down the hall. Poirot slipped his hand into his coat pocket. "Madame, remain here. You're not safe to wander the manor." He returned to the hall where Inspector Rourke stood with the other guests. The secretary, Aileen Doyle, was now conscious but pale. Her expression was taut with nerves, and she clutched her notebooks as though they might offer protection. "We found this in the hallway," Rourke announced, holding up a small folded note. "It was dropped or placed moments before the lights returned." Poirot accepted the note. It was identical in type to the letter Kincaid had shown him earlier. The message was brief. "Tonight it ends." Aileen clutched her chest. "That note! I saw someone running through the hall just before the blackout." "Who?" Rourke barked. I didn't see their face, but I heard breathing, heavy breathing." Poirot's gaze swept across the room again. The suspects watched with strained expressions, all trembling with a fear that felt more personal than grief. Poirot inhaled deeply. Already he sensed the truth. The storm had not merely brought chaos to Briarwell Manor, it had brought secrets to the surface. And one secret had killed Lord Kincaid. Poirot turned to Rourke. "Inspector," he said softly, "this was no accident, no sudden collapse. This was murder." A lightning bolt illuminated the hall for an instant, white, sharp, blinding. Chapter 2. The Missing Lady. The manor seemed to breathe with the storm as Hercule Poirot walked back through the echoing corridor. Each footstep swallowed by the thunder rumbling across the cliffs. Something in the air had changed since the discovery of Kincaid's body. A shift so subtle, yet so unmistakable, that Poirot felt it pulsing through the house like a second heartbeat. Fear lingered on every surface. It clung to the velvet curtains, curled beneath the carved wainscoting and swirled like mist in the dimly lit halls. Inspector Rourke followed close behind, muttering curses under his breath. "This place," he said, "feels rotten tonight, as if the storm has loosened all the sins from the walls." Poirot replied softly, "It is not the storm that loosens secrets, Inspector. It is the threat of exposure." Rourke snorted. "Philosophy now. What we need are answers." Poirot did not respond. His mind was already arranging the puzzle pieces: Lady Rowan's trembling confession, the silver powder, the mysterious note, Kincaid's fear earlier that evening. He needed clarity, and clarity demanded interviews. But first he needed to locate every person still wandering the manor. A murderer had moved silently through Briarwell once. He or she could do so again. They returned to the main hall, where the suspects had gathered in a tight cluster near the fireplace. Flames snapped and spat, casting long shadows across their faces. The tension had only thickened. It swirled between them like fog. Poirot surveyed them one by one. Dr. Michael Brier, the disgraced physician, stood with his arms crossed tightly, his face glistening with perspiration, not entirely attributable to the fire's heat. He had the look of a man who had seen too many bodies in his time. Yet the sight of Kincaid's corpse had shaken him visibly. Aileen Doyle, the secretary, clutched her notebooks to her chest as if they were armour. Her eyes darted from Poirot to the others with quick, nervous flickers. Her tidy appearance, dark skirt, crisp blouse, neatly pinned hair, was now dishevelled. She looked like a woman who had aged a year in the last hour. Colm O'Shea, the estate manager, stood a step apart from the others. His shoulders were broad, his hands rough and calloused, and his jaw set in a grim line, but his eyes, pale blue and unsettled, betrayed the turmoil within. He was a man used to storms, yet something about tonight had shaken him deeply. Poirot faced them. "Mes amis," he began gently, "a man has died tonight, and not by chance. Until we understand what has happened, each of you must remain where you can be accounted for. But first, there is one among us who must be brought forward." He turned to Declan, the butler, who hovered uncertainly near the staircase. "Please summon Lady Rowan Kincaid." Declan did not move. Poirot frowned. "Monsieur, did you hear me?" The butler swallowed. I cannot summon her, sir." Rourke barked. "And why not?" Declan's voice trembled. "Because the lady, she is gone." For a moment, the only sound was the crackling fire. Poirot stepped closer, his eyes narrowing with precision. "Explain," he said quietly, though his tone left no room for dithering. "I escorted her to the music room half an hour before the power flickered," Declan said. "I saw her no more after that. When the scream came, I checked the room. She was not there." Poirot's fingers twitched toward his moustache. "She was there when I arrived moments after the scream. When did you check?" Declan hesitated. "A few minutes after. She must have slipped out." "And where did she go?" The butler shook his head helplessly. "I do not know, sir." Inspector Rourke cursed. "Brilliant! The woman's wandering around the manor while her husband lies dead in the hall." Poirot lifted a hand. "Do not jump to conclusions, Inspector. It is possible she fled in distress. It is possible she fled because she's guilty." Rourke leaned close. "A woman running around the manor with mud on her gloves right after her husband dies? You call that coincidence, Poirot?" Poirot's eyes glinted. "Everything is a coincidence until proven otherwise. And guilt, that is not worn like a coat that one simply slips on or off. Let us not mistake fear for malice." The inspector huffed irritably, but said nothing more. Poirot turned back to the suspects. "Before we search for Lady Rowan," he said, "I must speak with each of you alone." A ripple of unease passed through the group. Colm O'Shea stepped forward first. "Speak with me, then. Better to start with the one who knew the bastard longest." "Très bien," Poirot said. "Inspector, remain here with the others, Declan. Ensure no one wanders." Poirot led Colm to a smaller sitting room adjacent to the hall. The estate manager closed the door behind them. The room smelled of furniture polish and old tobacco, and the wind rattled the windows with a steady, unsettling rhythm. Poirot gestured toward a chair, and Colm sank into it wearily. Poirot began softly. "Monsieur O'Shea, you were the estate manager for Lord Kincaid. For how long?" 15 years, Colm said, and a miserable 15 they were. "You did not like him?" "I served him. That is different." Colm leaned back, folding his large hands. He could be generous, when it suited him, but he could also be cruel. Vindictive. He held secrets over everyone who worked for him. "And what secrets did he hold over you?" Colm hesitated. Poirot watched the internal struggle flicker across the man's face. At last, Colm exhaled heavily. "Glenmore," he whispered. "I was there. I helped cover it up." Poirot nodded slowly. "You feel guilt?" "Aye, enough to choke a man alive." Colm's voice cracked. "Those children, I hear their names in my sleep, and Kincaid, he slept just fine." Poirot considered him carefully. "Did you threaten Lord Kincaid tonight?" "No," Colm said quickly, "but I wanted to. God knows I wanted to." He met Poirot's gaze. Wanting a thing and doing it are different. Poirot believed him. Colm O'Shea had the look of a man tormented, but not murderous. Poirot stood. "Merci, monsieur. Please rejoin the group." As Colm left, Aileen Doyle appeared hesitantly at the doorway. "Is it my turn, Monsieur Poirot?" "Enter," Poirot said. Aileen slid inside like a shadow, closing the door with delicate care. She held her notebooks tightly, as though afraid they might be taken from her. Poirot noticed the ink stains on her fingers, evidence of a lifetime of writing, copying, cataloguing, a secretary's hands. And yet there was something else, a nervous energy, something brittle. "Please sit," Poirot said. Aileen obeyed mechanically. "You were close to Lord Kincaid professionally?" Poirot asked. She nodded. "I handled all his correspondence, his files, his contracts, everything." "And his personal letters?" Another nod. Poirot took a step toward her. "Mademoiselle, did you leak the documents that angered him so?" Aileen's lips parted in a tremor of shock. "No, I would never. My job, my livelihood, depended on him." "And your fear of him?" Aileen flinched. "He could be harsh, yes, but I served him faithfully." Poirot examined her face. "And the note found near his body. How did it come to be there?" Her eyes widened. "I told Inspector Rourke. I saw someone before the blackout, a figure, moving quickly. I heard heavy breathing." "Were you the writer of the note?" "No," she said fiercely. "I swear it." Poirot stepped back, thinking. And Lady Rowan, what was their relationship like? Aileen's expression softened with pity. "She lived in fear of him. That is the truth. He controlled every aspect of her life. Where she went, whom she spoke to, even what she read." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "And the medication?" Aileen's face paled. "You know about that." Poirot nodded gently. Aileen swallowed hard. "Lord Kincaid's doctor prescribed sedatives for his episodes, but he sometimes gave diluted doses to Lady Rowan, claiming it was for her nerves." Poirot's eyes sharpened. She did not know. She suspected, but she never dared confront him. The detective paused, absorbing the revelation. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "what do you fear most at this moment?" Aileen's hands shook around her notebook. "That whoever threatened him is still here." Poirot believed her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Return to the hall." When she left, the last suspect waiting in the corridor was Dr. Michael Briar. Poirot gestured him inside. The doctor walked with the fatigue of a man accustomed to sleepless nights. His face was lined, his eyes troubled. The scent of disinfectant trailed faintly behind him. "Doctor," Poirot began, "you treated Lord Kincaid, did you not?" "I did," Briar said bitterly. "Though I wish I hadn't. The man used medicine as a tool of control." Poirot folded his hands behind his back. "And yet you continued to serve him." Dr. Briar's lips twisted in shame. "He ruined my reputation once. I thought that if I stayed in his service, perhaps he would restore it. Foolish hope. Did you prescribe him the silver nitrate tablets?" The doctor nodded. "For his panic attacks. But they were meant to be taken carefully, diluted, measured. Too much can cause arrhythmia." Poirot stepped closer. "Doctor, did you give him a lethal dose tonight?" Briar recoiled. "No, absolutely not. I barely spoke to him after dinner." "You brought the medication with you?" Briar's eyes widened in sudden realization. "My bag. It was in the study before the blackout. When I went back, it was disturbed." Poirot's interest sharpened. "Disturbed in what way?" "Papers shifted, my instruments moved, and the bottle of tablets had been opened." Poirot felt the air shift again, more pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "Thank you, Doctor," he said quietly. When Briar departed, Poirot finally stood alone. The storm roared against the walls. Lady Rowan was missing. Kincaid had been poisoned. A killer moved unseen through the manor. Poirot drew a long breath. It was time to find the missing lady. The music room was empty when he returned. The harp stood tall, its golden frame gleaming. The windows shuddered under the storm. The air bore the faint scent of Rowan's perfume. Violets and something darker, more melancholic. Poirot scanned the room with meticulous precision. A fallen chair. A music sheet crumpled by a shaking hand. And near the back door, muddy droplets leading into the corridor. Not outward, but inward. The lady had fled deeper into the manor. Poirot followed the trail, moving silently past portraits and alcoves. The droplets led to a side hallway seldom used by guests. The walls were bare. The lamps flickered weakly, then a whisper, soft, faint, coming from the end of the corridor. Poirot walked carefully. When he reached the final door, he paused, listening. The whisper came again, fragile, trembling. He opened the door slowly. Lady Rowan sat on the floor, her back pressed to a bookcase, her gown soaked and her hands shaking uncontrollably. She looked up at Poirot with wild, tear-filled eyes. "He didn't deserve it," she whispered. "For all his faults, he didn't deserve to die like that." Poirot knelt gently beside her. "Madame, did you harm your husband?" "No," she cried. "I swear it. I only tried to speak to him tonight. I tried to tell him I couldn't bear the secrets anymore. But he shouted. He said I would destroy everything. I ran." Poirot touched her hand delicately. "Why did you hide?" "Because someone came looking for me," she whispered. "Someone walked these halls calling my name, but it wasn't Declan, and it wasn't you." Poirot's breath tightened. "Who was it?" "I do not know," she said, trembling. "I only know that when I heard their footsteps, I felt hunted." Poirot helped her stand. "Madame," he said softly, "for your safety, you must stay with the others." As he guided her back toward the hall, Poirot realized with icy clarity. The killer was not yet finished, and Lady Rowan may not have been the intended first victim. Chapter 3. Footsteps in the dark. The storm had grown vicious by the time Poirot escorted Lady Rowan back to the hall. Wind hammered the windows with a violence that made even the thick stone walls tremble, and lightning bled across the glass in jagged forks. The others turned as the pair entered, a wave of whispers rolling through them. Rowan's wet gown clung to her slender frame. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her breath trembled in her chest like a trapped bird. Declan rushed forward with a blanket, draping it around her shoulders, while Rourke approached Poirot almost instantly, his expression sharp with impatience. "Where was she?" he demanded. "Hiding," Poirot replied evenly, terrified, and with reason. Rourke frowned. Reason? What reason? Other than her guilt? Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Lady Rowan's fear is not that of a murderer, Inspector. It is the fear of prey." That sentence rippled through the hall like a gust of cold wind. Aileen clutched her notebook tighter. Dr. Briar's eyes narrowed with unease. Even Colum, with all his gruff defiance, looked rattled. Poirot turned to Rowan. "Madame, please repeat what you told me." Rowan swallowed hard. "Someone was looking for me," she whispered, voice frayed at the edges, "walking the hall, calling my name, but not kindly, as if they wanted me to answer, and regret it." Rourke huffed in disbelief. "In a house full of people, someone could have simply been searching for you." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Non, Inspector. She described fear, something instinctual." He stepped forward, his voice rising with calm authority. "And someone did move through these halls during the blackout. Someone who opened Dr. Briar's medical bag. Someone who left muddy prints in the music room. And someone who planted the threatening note near the body." He let the silence settle, heavy and suffocating. "One among us is not telling the truth." Aileen swallowed audibly. Dr. Briar glanced around with growing desperation. Colum's jaw stiffened. Poirot continued, "But before I proceed with my deductions, I require one thing." He walked to the heavy oak door leading to the east wing. Old, unused, its hinges rusted. "The power flickered during the blackout," Poirot said, "and this door was unsecured afterward." Rourke blinked. "Are you saying the killer came through here?" Poirot did not answer. Instead, he pushed the door open. A gust of icy air rushed in, smelling of damp stone and disuse. The east wing was dark and silent. Poirot lit a small lantern from the fireplace and stepped inside, gesturing for Rourke to follow. The others remained in the hall, fear anchoring them where they stood. The corridor ahead was narrow, lined with cracked wallpaper and covered in a film of dust. Yet something was unmistakably wrong. Footprints, fresh, distinct, and leading deeper into the abandoned wing. Rourke exhaled sharply. "Someone's been in here, tonight." Poirot knelt carefully, studying the prints. "Two sets," he murmured. "One heavier, one lighter. Both recent. The lighter set overlaps the heavier in places." Rourke stared. "Meaning what?" Poirot straightened. "Meaning that two people walked this hall. One followed the other." He raised the lantern and proceeded further down the corridor. The footsteps wound around a slight corner, then halted suddenly in front of a small service door. Poirot ran his fingertips along the wood. "Open it," Rourke said. Poirot obliged. Inside was a cramped, dust-choked storage alcove. At first glance, it was empty. But Poirot lifted the lantern higher, and there, on the floor, half hidden behind a toppled crate, was a torn strip of fabric. Smooth, expensive, deep blue. Lady Rowan's gown had been deep blue. Poirot's face remained unreadable. "This is where she hid, before moving deeper into the manor." Rourke frowned. "Then who followed her?" Poirot lowered the lantern. "We returned to the hall. It is time to confront them." The group looked smaller somehow as Poirot and Rourke returned, more fragile, more frayed. Rowan lifted her head, eyes searching Poirot with desperate hope. "You found something," she whispered. Poirot nodded, enough to illuminate a shadow. He stood in the centre of the hall, hands folded neatly before him. "Mes amis," he said, "the killer is among us, watching our every move, and they have made mistakes." Aileen's breath hitched. "Whose mistakes?" Poirot surveyed them slowly. "One of you entered the east wing during the blackout. One of you tampered with the doctor's medical bag. One of you followed Lady Rowan through the halls, seeking her in the dark." He paused, "And one of you risked returning to the body to plant a note that Kincaid himself must have recognized before he died." Aileen shook her head hurriedly. "I didn't go anywhere. I was in the library when the lights went. You were not," Poirot said simply. Aileen froze. Poirot continued, "I found ink smudged on the handle of the east wing door, fresh, and your fingers, mademoiselle, bear the same midnight blue ink. You touched that door tonight." Aileen's eyes widened. I only went looking for Rowan. I heard her crying. I thought—" Poirot raised a single finger. "You did not mention this before." She stammered. I was afraid it looked suspicious," Rourke scoffed. "It is suspicious." But Poirot shook his head. "Not enough. Her prints were on the door, yes, but she left no footprints in the dust beyond. She opened it, nothing more." Aileen sagged in relief. Poirot turned next to Dr. Briar. "Doctor, you did not tamper with your own bag. Someone took the silver nitrate from it, a substance that in high doses could have ended Kincaid's life within minutes." Briar ran a trembling hand over his face. "Then someone stole it to frame me." "Perhaps," Poirot said. "Or perhaps they knew exactly what they required." He shifted his focus slowly, inevitably, toward the last man, Colm O'Shea. Colm's jaw tightened. "Don't look at me like that. Your boots," Poirot said softly, "are caked with mud that matches the trail in the music room, and the depth of the prints in the east wing matches your stride." Colm stiffened. Lady Rowan gasped. "But," Poirot added, "before we accuse, I must ask you a question." He stepped closer, his eyes sharp as knives. "Colm O'Shea, why did you follow Lady Rowan into the dark?" Colm's breath hitched, but not with guilt, with something far heavier. "I wasn't following her," he said roughly. "I was trying to reach her." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Colm's voice broke. "Because I knew Kincaid had threatened her again. She ran past me before the blackout. I called her name to help her, not harm her." Rowan pressed a hand to her lips. Poirot looked into the man's face. Pain, fear, regret, but not deceit. Poirot turned slowly, addressing all of them. "Then one question remains," he said, voice low. "If neither Aileen nor the doctor nor Colm sought Lady Rowan with malice—" Lightning cracked violently overhead. "Who walked the halls calling her name?" The entire room fell silent. Poirot let the tension stretch, coil, settle into their bones. Then he whispered, "There is someone unaccounted for. Someone who has been in this house tonight, unseen." And as another thunderclap shook the manor, the candles flickered violently, before plunging the hall into complete and suffocating darkness. Chapter 4. The breath behind the door. Darkness devoured Briarwell Manor in an instant, thick, absolute, a suffocating cloak that made each breath feel stolen. The thunder that followed shook the rafters, a crack that rolled through the hall like a living roar. Someone screamed, short, sharp, swallowed immediately by the storm. Poirot felt bodies shifting, hands brushing against him. Breaths quivering in the dark. The air tasted of fear. "Remain still!" Poirot commanded, his voice cutting through the blackness. "No one moves!" But the darkness did not remain still. Somewhere to Poirot's left, footsteps scurried, light, quick, panicked. To his right, something heavy scraped across the floor. A door slammed somewhere in the house, followed by the faint, hurried patter of retreating feet. Inspector Rourke cursed. "The generator's gone out! Again!" Poirot reached into his coat, retrieving a small emergency matchbox. He struck a single match. The weak flame trembled, illuminating only a small circle around him. Faces appeared in fragments, Rowan clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Aileen's eyes wide with terror. Dr. Briar hunched and trembling, column rigid as a statue. Then the flame died. Another rumble of thunder, another heartbeat of darkness. Poirot lit a second match. This time the flame revealed something new. A door at the far end of the hall, one not used in years, now stood open by an inch. Its outline was visible only because a faint draught whispered through the gap, stirring dust motes in the amber light of the match. Poirot narrowed his eyes. The servants' passage, a forgotten corridor that wound behind the walls and up toward the abandoned guest rooms. Someone had slipped through there when the lights went out. Someone who had been waiting for darkness. Poirot extinguished the match and turned sharply toward Rourke. "Inspector, your lantern." Rourke fumbled for a moment before producing it. The flint sparked. Dim yellow light filled the hall. It was flickering, unstable, but enough to dispel the terror that had settled like fog. "Everyone stays in this room," Rourke barked. "No exceptions." Poirot ignored him entirely and walked straight toward the cracked door. As he approached, a faint sound drifted from within. Breathing. Not human breathing, not steady or calm. This breath was ragged, trembling and shallow, as if the lungs behind it strained through pain or terror. Poirot paused only a moment before pushing the door open. Cold air rushed out, smelling of stone, damp, and something metallic. Blood, perhaps? The corridor beyond was narrow and low-ceilinged, lit only by the lantern Rourke brought up behind him. The walls were close enough that Poirot could run a hand along both sides simultaneously. Dust carpeted the floor, yet a clear trail of footprints disturbed the surface, leading deeper into the passage. Fresh footprints. Poirot raised the lantern higher and followed the trail. The corridor angled sharply left, then dipped downward. The breathing grew louder. Poirot slowed, lifting the lantern as he rounded the final bend, and saw a shape collapsed against the far wall. "Inspector," Poirot said quietly, "light here." Rourke rushed forward, and the lantern glow spilled over the figure. A young man, pale, shaking. It took Poirot only seconds to recognize him. "Liam Ward," he murmured, "the gardener's boy." Rowan gasped from behind. "He wasn't meant to be here. He left for the village this morning." "No," Poirot said softly. "He did not." Liam lifted his head. His face was streaked with mud and fear. His clothes were soaked, as though he had been outside in the storm. And on his sleeve, Poirot spotted it at once, was a smear of silver powder. The same residue found on Kincaid's shattered glass. Liam tried to speak, but only a broken whisper emerged. I didn't mean." Poirot knelt beside him. "Liam, mon garçon, begin at the beginning. You are hurt?" The boy shook his head fiercely. "No, just frightened. I heard voices earlier, near the cliff path. They were arguing, Lord Kincaid and someone else, someone angry." Rourke leaned forward. Who was he speaking to? Liam swallowed, trembling violently. I didn't see. I hid behind the stone arch. But I heard shouting. Kincaid accused them of betrayal, of ruining him, of Glenmore. Poirot's eyes sharpened. Glenmore again. Liam nodded desperately. Then there was a sound, like metal, and Kincaid cried out. Rowan clutched her chest. I ran, Liam continued. I didn't want to be caught spying. Then the storm hit hard. I got lost in the fog. I tried to come back through the servants' passage to alert Declan, but the lights went out and his voice broke. Poirot placed a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. Liam, think carefully. Did Kincaid's companion follow you? Did they see you? Liam's breath hitched. Yes, they chased me. Rowan gasped. Aileen stepped backward. Even Colm stiffened. Poirot kept his voice calm. And did you recognize this person? The boy squeezed his eyes shut, remembering. They wore a long coat, dark, hooded. They didn't speak, but their footsteps, fast, heavy. Poirot leaned slightly closer. And when they grabbed me, their hands smelled of chemical, sharp, like the stuff Dr. Briar uses in his office. Dr. Briar blanched instantly. You must be mistaken, I never. Poirot held up a hand. No one is accused yet. He helped Liam stand. The boy was weak, shaking badly, but he could walk. As they returned through the narrow corridor, Rourke muttered under his breath. So the bastard chased the boy through the walls, hiding like a rat. Oui, Poirot murmured, but a desperate rat. One who acts without thinking. One who fears discovery. They emerged back into the hall, where the others waited anxiously. Poirot stepped forward, lantern in hand, and addressed the room with quiet intensity. Mes amis, tonight we have learned much. Lord Kincaid quarrelled with someone on the cliff path before his death. Someone chased Liam when he overheard. Someone followed Lady Rowan through the east wing, and someone handled silver nitrate, the likely poison. He looked at each face slowly, one by one, and he saw it. Not guilt, not fear, but calculation. One of them was preparing their next move. Poirot lifted the lantern slightly. And now, he said softly, we have reached a turning point. The murderer is cornered. They know it. And when a cornered murderer grows fearful, they become dangerous. A sudden crash echoed from the upper floor. A door slamming violently, footsteps pounding across old timber boards. Poirot's eyes lifted. The killer, he whispered, is not finished. Chapter 5. The Chamber Above the Storm. The sound from the upper floor reverberated through the manor like a warning. A violent slam, followed by hurried footsteps pounding across old wood, sent every head snapping upward. The storm outside roared in answer, its wind pushing against the shutters as if eager to join the chaos within. Poirot was already moving toward the staircase before Inspector Rourke could bark an order. No one follows except the inspector, Poirot said sharply, lifting the lantern. The rest of you remain here, together. Aileen whimpered. Rowan clutched the blanket around her. Dr. Briar wiped sweat from his brow with a trembling hand. Colm stepped forward, impulsively. I should go, he muttered, to protect— No, Poirot cut in. Your strength is needed to guard the others, and besides, his gaze sharpened. If the killer believes they are pursued only by two men, they may reveal more than if chased by a crowd. Colm hesitated, jaw clenched, then stepped back. Poirot ascended the staircase with deliberate calm, lantern held just high enough to cast trembling shadows along the corridor walls. Rourke followed, revolver drawn, boots thudding on the steps. At the landing, a cold draught swept through, carrying the scent of wet wood and something faintly metallic. Poirot noted this immediately. Blood? Rourke whispered. Or chemical? Poirot murmured. The corridor upstairs holds many secrets. They walked slowly down the long hall. The walls were lined with faded portraits of Kincaid ancestors, their sombre expressions flickering in the lantern light. One painting, a tall man with piercing eyes, seemed almost to follow them as they passed. The storm's rumble crept through the roof above, as if the house itself shivered. Halfway down the corridor, Poirot knelt. A footprint, fresh, the edges of the mud still wet, glistening faintly beneath the lantern glow. The same heavy tread left in the servants' passage. Rourke's grip tightened on his revolver. "This bastard is running out of room." Poirot rose and followed the prints until they reached a door at the far end, the north guest chamber, unused for years. The handle glistened with moisture, not from rain, sweat, fear. Poirot touched the metal with a handkerchief. "Still warm. He is inside," Poirot said. Rourke pressed against the door. "Stand back." Poirot shook his head. "Non. If you burst in as a man with a gun, you will frighten him into rash action. Allow me to speak first." Rourke stared, jaw clenched. He could be armed. "Perhaps," Poirot said softly, "but the killer tonight has relied on stealth, poison, shadows, not brute force. This is not a man who wishes open confrontation." Rourke stepped aside unwillingly. Poirot raised the lantern and knocked once. A pause. Poirot spoke calmly. "Monsieur, the night grows dangerous for you. You have been cornered. You can run no farther in this storm. Permit me to speak with you." Silence. Then a faint rustle from inside. Poirot glanced at Rourke. "I will open the door slowly." He turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a dim chamber filled with dust-heavy sheets draped over old furniture. The wind hissed through a cracked window. The lantern's glow cut a pale path across the room and revealed a figure hunched behind a wardrobe. "Step forward!" Rourke barked. The figure shuddered, then rose. It was Declan, the butler. His usually immaculate appearance was in tatters. His hair, normally slicked with precision, hung wild. His shirt was smeared with mud, his hands trembling like leaves in a gale. His eyes, red-rimmed, panicked, were fixed on Poirot with a desperation that bordered on madness. Poirot spoke gently. "Monsieur Declan, you run from shadows, but why? What have you seen tonight?" Declan staggered forward, clutching the wardrobe for balance. I didn't kill him," he stammered. "I swear it. I only found him on the cliffs earlier. I tried to warn him, tried to get him inside, but he shouted. He told me to keep silent, to leave before anyone saw." Poirot stepped closer. "You saw Lord Kincaid alive before he died?" Declan nodded jerkily. "He was arguing with someone wearing a hooded coat. I couldn't see the face, but the voice." His breath caught. It wasn't a man's voice. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A woman." Declan squeezed his eyes shut. "I was afraid to speak, afraid of being blamed. Lord Kincaid, he was furious, more than I'd ever seen him. He said something terrible." Declan's voice trembled. "He said, 'You ruined me once. Now you want to ruin me again?'" Rourke stepped forward. "Who was it, Declan? Say it." Declan shook his head violently. I don't know. But when the storm hit, they fled, and then I found something on the ground." He reached into his pocket with shaking fingers and produced a small metal object. Poirot lifted it carefully. A brooch, silver, elegant, shaped like a hawk in flight. Poirot inhaled sharply. Rowan had worn a brooch earlier that evening, a hawk-shaped one pinned to her cloak. But Rowan's had been gold, with emerald eyes. This one was silver. Poirot's mind whirled. "Declan," Poirot said softly, Where did you find this?" "On the cliff path," Declan whispered, "right where Kincaid was standing." Poirot exchanged a glance with Rourke. The inspector's frown deepened. "A second brooch," Rourke muttered. "So someone wants us to believe Lady Rowan was there." Poirot nodded. "And someone wants the suspicion placed upon her shoulders." He stared at the silver hawk in his hand. A twin to Rowan's gold one. Not identical, but meaningful. "Declan," Poirot said, "why did you flee to the upper floor? Were you being followed?" Declan's face paled further. Yes. Footsteps behind me. Someone coming through the servants' passage. I hid here. I thought they'd kill me." Poirot straightened slowly. "The killer," he murmured, "did not come here for Declan. They came to retrieve what he found." He closed his hand around the brooch. "And now they know they have failed." Rourke holstered his revolver. "We take him downstairs. Let the others see we've found him." "No," Poirot said sharply. "We take him, yes, but we show nothing, say nothing." Rourke frowned. "Why not?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Because the killer believes Declan holds the secret that destroys them. They believe he will reveal their name." Rourke blinked. "And will he?" Poirot looked directly into the trembling butler's eyes. "No." Poirot stepped into the hall, lowered his voice, and spoke with a calm, almost chilling certainty. "Because the killer tonight is someone who believes themselves clever. Someone who manipulates shadows. Someone who plants evidence with precision." He held up the silver brooch. "And when I present this in the hall below, the killer will react." Poirot began descending the stairs, lantern glowing in his hand. "Tonight," he murmured, "we flush them out." Thunder cracked above the manor as he reached the final step. And somewhere below, someone waited in the dark, watching, listening, preparing their next move. Chapter 6. Whispers. Beneath the oak tree. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the grounds of Dunmoragh Manor heavy with dew and strangely muffled, as though the world, too, was holding its breath. Hercule Poirot stepped onto the terrace, savouring the crisp Irish air that smelled faintly of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the distant sea. A thin mist drifted over the lawns, obscuring the ancient oak tree that dominated the back gardens like a silent guardian, or perhaps a keeper of old grudges. He tightened his scarf and looked over his shoulder as footsteps approached. It was Inspector Cormac Doyle, looking uncharacteristically shaken despite his rugged demeanour. "Morning, Poirot," he muttered. "You'll want to see this." Poirot followed him across the glistening lawn until they reached the oak tree. Something pale protruded from the soil near its roots, freshly disturbed soil. Poirot knelt, delicate as a surgeon, brushing away the dirt with a handkerchief. A small leather pouch emerged, its drawstrings frayed. Inside lay a tarnished silver locket. Within the locket, a faded miniature painting of Lady Roisin, and opposite it, the late Eamon O'Callaghan, together smiling, younger, unmistakably intimate. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Mon ami, this changes the geometry of the situation." Cormac crossed his arms. "If Patrick sees that, he'll go mad. His mother never once admitted to any impropriety." Poirot closed the locket gently. "Every family guards secrets, Inspector, some with more fervour than wisdom." A crow cawed harshly above them. Poirot rose. "Tell me, Inspector, who found this?" "A groundskeeper, early this morning. Claims he was clearing branches and saw the disturbed earth." Poirot studied the mound again. The soil bore marks, careful marks. No, this was no accident. Someone wished this locket found. Doyle cursed under his breath. Another game, another twist. Poirot smiled faintly. But of course, murder, like the theatre, thrives on spectacle. Returning inside, Poirot requested that all members of the household gather in the drawing-room. His tone brooked no refusal. Lady Roachine sat rigidly near the fireplace, her gaze fixed on the carpet. Patrick paced in furious circles. Maeve Lynch, pale as chalk, clutched a rosary in trembling fingers. And Declan O'Rourke, polished as ever, tried to appear aloof, but failed. The vein in his temple betrayed him. Poirot entered last, the locket resting lightly in his gloved palm. "My friends," he began gently, "murderers often depend upon silence. Today, I intend to break some of it." Lady Roachine lifted her head sharply. Patrick froze. Declan swallowed. Maeve whispered a prayer. Poirot opened the locket for all to see. Lady Roachine's breath left her in a painful gasp. Where did you find that?" "Buried beneath the oak tree," Poirot said softly. Freshly, Patrick's voice cracked. "Mother, what is this? Why do you have a portrait with him?" Lady Roachine tried to compose herself, but tears pooled against her will. I never wished for this to come out. Not like this." Poirot offered a handkerchief. She refused it. She spoke slowly. "Years ago, before my husband died, I met Eamon O'Callaghan at a charity ball. He was charming, eloquent. I was lonely. My marriage was cold, and I made a mistake. A foolish, human mistake." Patrick's face twisted in a mix of betrayal and disbelief. "But," she continued, "it ended quickly. He wanted more. I did not. I feared the ruin of my family's name. He kept the locket as leverage." Declan suddenly stiffened. Poirot watched him closely. "Eamon threatened you?" Poirot asked. Lady Roachine nodded. "He hinted he might reveal the affair, unless I assisted him financially. It was subtle at first, gentle, then not." Declan finally snapped. "You should have told me." She looked at him oddly. "And you, Declan? Would you have told Patrick that you yourself owed Eamon a substantial sum?" Declan's face blanched. Maeve gasped. Patrick spun around. "What?" Poirot steepled his fingers with satisfaction. "Oui. At last, the truth emerges." Declan stammered. I intended to repay it. I only borrowed it to keep my business afloat. Eamon charged me interest like a devil." Poirot stepped closer. "And you saw the locket as an opportunity. If exposed, Lady Roachine's scandal would overshadow your debt entirely. Convenient, n'est-ce pas?" Declan exploded. "Are you accusing me now?" Poirot remained perfectly still. "I accuse no one, yet, but I observe everything." The room simmered with unspoken wars. After, dismissing them, Poirot wandered alone through the silent corridors. He touched the wallpaper, studied the portraits, inhaled the faint scent of peat smoke and lavender polish. The manor seemed to whisper around him. Stories layered upon stories. Secrets pressed between its stones like dried flowers. In the dim hallway leading to Eamon's study, a board creaked beneath Poirot's step. He paused. Something felt off. He knelt and examined the floor. The board lifted slightly with pressure. Beneath it, a small envelope, crisp, white, immaculate. He opened it with care. Inside, a single sheet of paper bearing Eamon's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, the truth lies with the one who fears my voice the most." Poirot exhaled slowly. "A riddle, mon ami, très dramatique." He slipped the note into his pocket. That evening, the mist returned, encircling the manor like a pale serpent. Poirot stood at the library window, deep in contemplation. The oak tree loomed in the distance, its branches skeletal against the moonlit sky. Footsteps approached. Maeve Lynch's reflection appeared behind him, small, fragile, ghost-like. Monsieur Poirot, she whispered, I need to confess something. Poirot turned, his expression softening. Then speak, mademoiselle. Confession is often the first step toward truth. Tears welled in her eyes. I saw someone outside, the night Eamon died. Poirot tilted his head. Go on. I heard voices beneath the oak tree. One of them was Eamon, the other. She hesitated, trembling violently. The other was someone I recognized. Poirot stepped closer. Who was it, Maeve? She opened her mouth, and the library lights suddenly flickered. A sharp crack echoed outside like a snapped branch, or a warning. Maeve froze, terror flooding her features. Poirot whispered, Mademoiselle, who was it? She swallowed, and finally spoke. It was a scream tore through the manor before she could finish, and the entire household plunged into chaos. Chapter 7. The Scream in the Corridors. The scream reverberated through Dunmoragh Manor, like the cry of some wounded spirit clawing its way through stone. Poirot and Maeve froze for a fraction of a second, their hearts thudding in unison. Then Poirot moved, swift, purposeful, every instinct of the great detective igniting like a flame. Stay here, mademoiselle, he commanded, though Maeve clutched her rosary and followed despite trembling. They stepped into the corridor, where the golden sconces flickered violently, shadows racing like panicked ghosts. From the far end came frantic footsteps and Patrick's voice, raw with terror. Poirot hurried toward the noise. Patrick stood outside the music room, white as chalk, his breath ragged. She's inside, he stammered. Poirot pushed past him and entered. Lady Roachine lay collapsed beside the grand piano, her silk gown crumpled like fallen petals. Her face was turned upward, pale, eyes unfocused, alive, but barely. Declan O'Rourke knelt beside her, patting her cheeks desperately. She fainted, he said breathlessly. Something frightened her. I found her like this. Poirot crouched, examining her carefully. Her pulse fluttered like a trapped bird. Beside her hand lay a small object, something metallic catching the firelight. Poirot picked it up, a key, old-fashioned, brass, ornate, and unmistakably tied with a single red thread. Patrick gasped. That belonged to my father. I've only seen it once, in his study drawer. Poirot turned the key in his palm thoughtfully. A key that reappears after decades of dormancy is never innocent, mon ami. Lady Roachine stirred, whispering faintly, The drawer? Someone opened it. Poirot placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Rest, madame. You are safe. I shall discover what frightened you. As Declan lifted her gently, Maeve hovered in the doorway, trembling harder than before. Poirot noticed her eyes, not on Lady Roachine, but fixed on the key in his hand with something like dread. When the family dispersed at last, Lady Roachine escorted upstairs, Patrick supporting her, Declan unusually silent. Poirot motioned for Maeve to follow him into the hall. She hesitated at the threshold. Monsieur Poirot, I don't want to be alone. Poirot nodded sympathetically. I understand, mademoiselle. Fear is a heavy burden, but truth, once spoken, is lighter. He led her to the conservatory, where moonlight spilled through glass panes and the scent of damp earth and roses softened the air. Here, the night felt gentler. Now, Poirot said softly, you are about to tell me whom you saw beneath the oak tree on the night Eamon O'Callaghan died. Maeve's fingers tightened around her rosary until her knuckles whitened. I did not mean to listen. I was returning from the chapel. It was late. The mist was thick, and then I heard raised voices. Poirot remained perfectly still. One belonged to Eamon, she continued in a trembling whisper, angry, threatening, and the other she shut her eyes tight. It was Declan O'Rourke. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Are you certain?" Maeve nodded miserably. I recognized his tone. He has a very distinct way of speaking when he is furious. I've heard him lose his temper more than once. Poirot folded his arms. And yet Declan claimed he was in his quarters the entire night. He even swore on his reputation. Maeve lowered her voice. "Men lie for many reasons, monsieur." Poirot tapped his chin thoughtfully. "And you, mademoiselle, why did you not reveal this earlier?" She trembled. Because Mr. O'Rourke threatened me just 2 days before Eamon died. He said I knew too much about his finances. He told me to keep my mouth shut if I valued my position here. Poirot felt a chill run down his spine, not of fear, but of the unmistakable scent of unravelling truth. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been very brave." He offered her a moment to breathe. She sank into a chair, whispering her prayers. Poirot stepped out into the hallway, his mind already racing ahead, the pieces rearranging themselves with new clarity. He headed straight for Eamon's study. The storm-darkened corridor felt colder now, as though the manor itself recoiled at his determination. Poirot inserted the old brass key into the locked drawer Patrick had mentioned. It fit perfectly. The drawer opened with a reluctant groan. Inside lay a leather-bound ledger filled with numbers, loans, threats, repayment schedules. A list of names, some crossed out violently. And at the very bottom, a sealed envelope labelled, "To be opened only in the event of my death." Poirot hesitated, then broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. "If I am found dead, know this. One among the Dunmoragh household would rather see me silenced than exposed. Their secret is older than Patrick knows, deeper than Lady Roisin dares admit, and darker than Declan ever confessed." Poirot's brows lifted. The letter continued. "The one who fears my voice the most has already acted once. They will act again. And their hatred was not meant for me alone." Poirot closed the letter slowly, the chill in his bones deepening. Someone in this manor, someone desperate, had tried to kill twice, and likely would again. He returned the papers and locked the drawer. Poirot headed toward the staircase when he sensed movement, soft, deliberate, stealthy. He paused, listening. A shadow flickered across the landing. He climbed the stairs. Midway up, he smelled it, the faint scent of cigar smoke. Fresh, recently exhaled. "Bonsoir," Poirot said softly into the darkness. A figure stepped out. Declan O'Rourke, his expression unreadable, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Can't sleep," Declan muttered. "Too much damned tension in this house." Poirot did not look away. "And yet you stroll the corridors like a man who hides no fear." Declan gave a tight smile. "Fear? Of what? Gossip? Accusations? That woman's fainting spells? I've dealt with worse." Poirot's voice lowered. "And what of murder, Monsieur O'Rourke? Have you dealt with that?" Declan froze. For a heartbeat, they stared each other down. Then he scoffed. "If you have something to say, Poirot, say it plainly." Poirot leaned closer, eyes sharp. "Where were you on the night Eamon O'Callaghan died? Truly." Declan's jaw clenched. "I've told you." Poirot replied softly. "And I intend to prove you wrong." Declan's breath grew slow and dangerous. "You're poking your nose where it doesn't belong, detective." Poirot smiled politely. "Ah, but that is precisely where the nose of Hercule Poirot excels." Declan stepped back into the shadows, silent, unreadable. Poirot watched him disappear before turning toward his own quarters. The game had shifted, the killer had been stirred, and in Dunmoragh Manor, The next move would be deadly. Chapter 8. The Midnight Footsteps. A restless silence clung to Dunmoragh Manor that night, dense, oppressive, and humming with unspoken tension. Poirot retired to his guest chamber, yet he did not sleep. He sat beside the lamp, moustaches perfectly aligned, eyes fixed on the fog-drenched gardens outside. The old oak tree stood in silhouette, stark and accusing, its branches twisting like dark fingers against the moonlit sky. The manor was awake. Poirot could feel it. Crimes were rarely committed in daylight. Fear and guilt preferred the cloak of darkness. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Poirot rose immediately. Another sound followed, soft, rhythmic footsteps. Someone walking with unusual care. Poirot slipped into the corridor, keeping to the shadows, moving with surprising agility. The footsteps were descending the main staircase. A faint glow. Someone carried a lantern. Poirot followed. The figure reached the ground floor and crossed toward the east wing. Poirot kept his distance, observing the smooth, confident stride. Not Declan. His gait was heavier. Not Patrick. He walked with restless energy. Not Lady Roisin. This figure was far too steady. Then the lantern light caught her face. Maeve Lynch. Poirot's brows lifted in surprise. He whispered to himself, "What business has the timid maid in the east wing at such an hour?" Her face was tense, jaw clenched, eyes darting nervously. Not the frightened girl who trembled earlier. This Maeve moved with purpose. Poirot shadowed her past the old servant corridors until she stopped before a narrow door he had not seen before, hidden behind a tapestry. She opened it quickly and slipped inside. Poirot waited 3 seconds, then approached and pressed his ear against the wood. Voices, 2 of them. Maeve's, sharper, colder than he had ever heard. And a man's voice, low, gruff. Poirot carefully pushed the door open an inch. A narrow stone staircase descended into darkness, illuminated only by the lantern Maeve had set on a crate. She stood at the bottom, speaking harshly to a man whose back was turned. Poirot recognized the uniform at once. One of the manor groundskeepers, Liam Hurley. But why would Maeve meet him in secret? "You promised me," Maeve was whispering fiercely. "You said if I kept quiet you'd handle it. But now Poirot is here. He knows something." Liam ran a hand over his face. "I'm doing my best, Maeve. But O'Callaghan's death stirred up everything, and that bloody detective, he's too sharp." Maeve shook her head. "We should have burned the ledger when we had the chance." Poirot's heart quickened. "The ledger." He leaned closer. Liam continued, voice cracking slightly. "Maeve, if we confess now, we're finished. But Declan, he's getting desperate. And Patrick is poking. Around too much. And Lady Roisin?" Maeve whispered. Liam exhaled heavily. "She's been paying Declan for years to keep her secret safe." Maeve stiffened. "Her affair?" "No, not that." Liam looked over his shoulder instinctively. "Something older, something worse." Poirot's breath caught. However, he made a fatal mistake. The floorboard under him creaked. Maeve's head jerked upward instantly. "Who's there?" Poirot stepped in fully, knowing concealment was no longer possible. "Bonsoir," he said calmly, descending a step. "It appears I have interrupted a most illuminating conversation." Maeve backed away, eyes wide, terror overtaking the hardened expression from moments before. Liam stepped protectively in front of her. "Detective," Liam said tightly, "this isn't what you think." Poirot raised a brow. "Ah, non. Then do enlighten me, monsieur." Maeve suddenly burst into sobs. Please don't let them arrest me. I didn't kill him. I swear it." Poirot approached slowly. "You were meeting in secret. You speak of burning ledgers, of confessions, of secrets older than Patrick knows. And yet, you would have me believe none of this pertains to murder?" Liam stepped forward. "We were trying to protect the family." Poirot's eyes sharpened. Protect or conceal? Maeve wiped her tears but could not steady her breathing. "Monsieur Poirot, Eamon O'Callaghan discovered something. Something about the O'Callaghan and Dunleady families. He wasn't blackmailing only Lady Roisin or Declan. He was blackmailing everyone." Poirot folded his arms. "A family secret, then? One so precious that those in this manor would kill to keep it buried?" Liam nodded slowly. "Eamon found legal documents, old ones, suggesting Dunleady Manor might not actually belong to the McKennas." Poirot felt the impact like a sudden gust of wind. "Go on," Maeve whispered. "The lands, the deeds, everything. They might legally belong to the O'Callaghan line. Eamon threatened to reclaim all of it." Poirot's mind spun. So whoever killed him stood to lose everything if the truth emerged. Silence thickened between them. Poirot asked gently, "And the two of you, what role do you play in this grand drama?" Maeve collapsed onto a crate. "We were trying to protect Patrick. He's the only innocent one. Lady Roisin knew, Declan knew, Liam knew. Eamon discovered it, and someone silenced him before he could expose it." Poirot's tone hardened. "And the locket buried beneath the oak tree?" Liam swallowed visibly. "It wasn't me. Someone planted it." Poirot believed him. The fear in his voice was genuine. Maeve finally looked up, eyes full of frightened truth. "But monsieur, the one you should be afraid of isn't Declan." Poirot's breath stilled. Maeve leaned closer, whispering as though someone might be listening behind the very stone walls. "It's someone you haven't suspected yet. Someone who hides their intentions better than all of us." Poirot tilted his head. "And who might that be, mademoiselle?" Maeve trembled, then forced the words out. "The killer is someone who has been controlling this house for longer than Patrick has been alive." Poirot opened his mouth to speak, but a violent crash sounded from above, shaking dust from the ceiling, followed by footsteps, heavy, running. Poirot spun towards the staircase. Someone was coming. Chapter 9. The Shadow on the Landing. The footsteps thundered above like a charging beast, rattling the staircase stone by stone. Poirot turned sharply, one hand raised to steady Maeve as she staggered backward in fear. Liam snapped the lantern shut, plunging the stairwell into semi-darkness, but the sound of the intruder's approach only grew louder, closer, more desperate. Poirot whispered, "Remain perfectly still." Maeve clutched her rosary to her chest. Liam positioned himself at the base of the stairs, muscles tense like a cornered wolf. The air felt suffocating, thick with the cold scent of damp stone and approaching danger. Then a figure burst into view at the top of the stairwell. For one pulse-stopping moment, Poirot made out only a silhouette, shoulders broad, posture rigid, face hidden in shadow. But the presence alone was unmistakable. The figure hesitated, surprised to see all three below. "Stop where you are!" Liam barked, taking a threatening step forward. The lantern flickered, illuminating the intruder's face just long enough for Poirot to see his eyes. Patrick, breathless, wild-eyed, shaking. "Mr. McKenna!" Maeve gasped. What are you doing down here?" Patrick stumbled down 2 steps, his breath fogging in the frigid air. I heard voices. I came to see if... Poirot raised a hand sharply. "Patrick, do not take another step." But Patrick's face had already twisted in confusion and hurt. "What are you all doing down here?" he demanded. "Why are you meeting in secret, behind my back, under my own roof?" Maeve's voice broke. "Patrick, please, it's not what you think." Patrick stopped halfway down the stairs, fists clenched as though bracing for a blow. "I know you've been hiding something," he spat. "All of you. And now I find you whispering in cellars in the dead of night." Poirot descended the first step toward him. Calm, steady. "Monsieur Patrick, listen to me. This place, this hidden room, contains truths that concern you more than anyone else. Secrets your father never told you." Patrick's face twisted. "Secrets about the manor? About my mother?" Poirot nodded slowly. "Yes, mon garçon, and about Eamon O'Callaghan." Patrick's breath halted. "I knew it," he whispered. "I knew his death wasn't an accident." Poirot held his gaze. "And that is why you must remain calm. The truth is coming, but recklessness will only aid the murderer." Patrick swallowed hard, his fear slowly giving way to trembling resolve. He nodded and followed Poirot back up the steps, leaving Maeve and Liam behind. Once they reached the hallway, Poirot guided Patrick toward the lantern-lit corridor. The manor felt eerily silent now, as though it listened from behind every wall. They entered the library. Patrick sank into a chair, gripping the arms tightly. Poirot paced slowly before him. "I will tell you what I know, but I must also ask you questions, difficult ones." Patrick nodded, defeated. "I'll answer anything." Poirot clasped his hands behind his back. "What did you hope to find when you rushed down the stairs just now?" Patrick's eyes darted away. I thought someone was breaking into the strong room. I heard the crash. It sounded like the lock snapping." Poirot's brow arched. "And why would you fear for the strong room?" Patrick hesitated. "Because I keep my father's remaining documents there. The ones I found after he died, the ones I didn't understand." Poirot's heartbeat sharpened. "And you moved them recently, oui?" Patrick looked up sharply. "How did you—" Poirot smiled faintly. "A room speaks, Patrick. The dust shifts. The surfaces tell stories." Patrick ran a shaking hand through his hair. "I moved them because Declan kept asking if he could review old family papers. It felt wrong. I didn't trust him." Poirot nodded approvingly. "Very wise." He circled Patrick slowly. "There is another reason you descended the stairs tonight. You are frightened of something or someone." Patrick's jaw tightened. "Declan." Poirot froze. "Ah, so you fear him." Patrick nodded. "He's been acting strangely, nervous. I caught him arguing with my mother earlier, whispering harshly before she fainted." Poirot immediately leaned forward. "What did you overhear?" Patrick shook his head. "Barely a word. Only something like, 'You promised me it wouldn't come out.' And my mother said, 'Not now, not with him here.'" Poirot's blood chilled. Declan's panic, Lady Roisin's collapse, the resurfaced key, the letter, everything was aligning. Before Poirot could pursue the thread further, the library door swung open. Declan O'Rourke stood there, tall, silent, watching. Patrick jolted upright. Poirot turned slowly. "Bonsoir, Monsieur O'Rourke." Declan stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "You three disappear," he said calmly. "And suddenly there's commotion downstairs. Should I be worried?" Poirot tilted his head. "Worried, monsieur. Only the guilty worry." Declan smirked. "Then I have nothing to fear." Poirot studied him with piercing intensity. "You were near the corridor moments ago. We heard someone running." Declan's eyes locked on Poirot's. "This is an old house. Lots of echoes." Patrick stepped forward. "Declan, were you in the East Wing?" Declan ignored him. "Poirot," he murmured, "you're stirring up old ghosts, dangerous ones." Poirot replied softly, "It is not the ghosts I fear, monsieur, but the living." Declan's jaw flexed. For a moment, tension coiled between them like a drawn wire. Then Declan said quietly, "Be careful, detective. Not everything buried in this manor should be dug up." Poirot stepped closer, lowering his voice so that Patrick heard only fragments. "On the contrary, monsieur, everything must be unearthed, for murder thrives in darkness." Declan's eyes hardened. He turned and walked out, shutting the door gently, but the echo of the latch reverberated with threat. Patrick exhaled shakily. "Poirot, is he the killer?" Poirot did not answer immediately. Instead, he smoothed his moustache, deep in thought. "Patrick," he said softly, "look at me." Patrick lifted his eyes. Poirot spoke with grave calm. "Declan O'Rourke is hiding much, but I tell you this, the true killer, the one who orchestrated all of this, is far more cunning." A hush filled the library, thick and heavy. Patrick swallowed. "Then who?" Poirot held up a finger. "Patience, mon ami. The truth is forming." He stepped toward the door. "For now, stay in your room. Lock it, and trust no one." Patrick nodded, terrified. Poirot extinguished the lantern, leaving only the moon's pale glow. As they stepped into the corridor, the manor groaned. Someone moved at the far end. Chapter 10. The Mask Falls. The manor was eerily quiet that night, as though holding its breath for the inevitable revelation. Poirot moved through the corridors with measured steps, each echo amplified by the high ceilings and shuttered windows. The wind outside had returned, whispering through the eaves, carrying with it the faint smell of wet earth and salt from the distant sea. Every shadow seemed alive, shifting, watching. Dunmoragh Manor itself was a conspirator, poised on the edge of confession. Poirot's mind replayed the threads he had collected. The quarrel on the cliff path, the silver locket buried beneath the oak, the mysterious key from Patrick's father's drawer, and Maeve's midnight conversation with Liam Hurley. Each piece was a note in a deadly symphony. Yet one chord remained unresolved, the identity of the orchestrator, the one who manipulated the others, whose hand had struck Eamon O'Callaghan. He gathered the household in the drawing-room, deliberately leaving Patrick, Lady Roisin, Declan, Maeve and Liam standing just beyond the circle of lamplight. Poirot's presence commanded attention. The others were hushed, uneasy. He held the silver brooch in one hand, the brass key in the other, letting their weight speak before he uttered a single word. "Mes amis, tonight the truth shall be revealed." His voice was calm, deliberate, and carried the authority of certainty. "Murder is rarely spontaneous. It is an act of careful orchestration, and those who plan do not leave themselves to chance." Declan's face remained impassive, but Poirot saw the faint tremor in his fingers. Lady Roisin's expression was rigid, controlled, yet a single tear betrayed the anxiety beneath. Patrick stood tall, chest heaving, while Maeve fidgeted nervously and Liam appeared tense, alert. Poirot held the silver brooch aloft. This was planted to mislead. A twin to Lady Rowan's own. A red herring to divert suspicion. And it worked, until small, overlooked details began to unravel the deception. He turned to the brass key. This key unlocked a drawer in which Eamon O'Callaghan kept documents critical to understanding the family's legacy. The discovery of these papers, combined with the threat of exposure, provided motive enough for many to act, but only one acted with cunning, knowledge, and an intimate awareness of all household secrets. Poirot's gaze swept across the room, lingering on each face in turn. His eyes finally rested on Maeve Lynch. She shrank back slightly, her lips parting as though to protest. But Poirot continued calmly, methodically. "Mademoiselle Lynch," he said, voice soft yet unyielding, "you are clever, yes, but cleverness is insufficient when it is guided by fear. You sought to protect Patrick, yes. You sought to prevent the truth from harming the innocent. But in doing so, you conspired to hide evidence and obstruct justice. That much is clear. Yet you are not the murderer." Maeve exhaled shakily. Relief flickered in her eyes. Poirot's gaze shifted. And now, the one who killed Eamon O'Callaghan, the one who exploited the shadows, the storm, and the confusion. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Is none other than Declan O'Rourke. Declan's eyes widened, but no sound came. Poirot continued, each word deliberate, each detail precise. "Declan, you understood the family, the manner and the secrets that could ruin both Lady Roisin and young Patrick. You knew of the ledger, the hidden documents, the old family disputes over the O'Callaghan lands. Eamon threatened to expose these truths, to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. You confronted him on the cliff path, and in the heat of argument you used silver nitrate, the same substance discovered on the wineglass, to strike him down. You then staged the scene, planting the locket, creating the chaos of the storm, and manipulating Liam and Maeve to cover your movements." Declan swallowed hard, finally speaking, his voice low and controlled. "You have no proof." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Proof is composed of small, seemingly insignificant details that, when arranged correctly, form a chain of undeniable logic. First, the footprints through the servants' passage, heavy, controlled, consistent with your stride. Second, the chemical, residue, present only on the glass Eamon drank from and on your gloves when you handled his belongings. Third, the knowledge you displayed far beyond any ordinary servant of Lady Roisin's secrets and the hidden key. Each link leads to you, mon ami. Declan's face hardened, but there was a flicker of panic in his eyes. It was to protect the family. I did it for them. Poirot's expression softened, his voice low, almost paternal. "Ah, Declan, one can love a family too much, but murder is never protection. It is destruction." Patrick stepped forward, voice shaking with emotion. "You killed him. You risked everything, the estate, the family, for what? To cover lies?" Declan's gaze fell. I couldn't let Eamon ruin everything. He would have taken it all. The manor, the lands, my position, everything." Poirot nodded. "And yet, your greed and fear blinded you to reason, mon ami. The consequences of one man's action ripple far beyond the intentions that begin them." The silence of the drawing room pressed against them. Outside, the wind had calmed, the storm finally spent, as though nature itself had paused to witness justice unfold. Declan lowered his eyes, accepting the inevitable. Poirot spoke again, softening his tone. "Let this be a lesson in human folly, the power of fear, and the weight of truth. Justice is not vengeance, but illumination. The shadows of Dunmoragh Manor have been chased away, yet the memory of these events will linger, reminding each of you that secrecy and deceit carry a price far greater than anticipated." Lady Roisin collapsed into Patrick's arms, trembling. Patrick held her, whispering words Poirot could not hear. Liam and Maeve stood at the edges, relieved yet sobered by the revelations. Poirot adjusted his coat, then addressed the entire household. "Tonight, we have learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. That truth is sometimes hidden, but it cannot be silenced forever. and that even the cleverest of shadows will be revealed when the light of observation is applied. Declan, escorted by Inspector Doyle, left the room quietly, the sound of his footsteps echoing like a final toll of reckoning. Poirot turned to the remaining household members, his gaze gentle. "Now, my friends, you may begin to heal. Remember what has transpired, yes, but do not dwell upon the terror. Learn from it, and cherish the clarity that comes when the mask falls and truth is unmasked." He moved to the window, gazing at the calm gardens below. The oak tree stood silent, its branches still against the moonlit sky. The locket, the key, the ledger, all artifacts of human desire, ambition, and error, had fulfilled their roles. Justice, tempered with wisdom, had prevailed. Patrick approached, hesitant. "Monsieur Poirot, thank you. I don't know what to say." Poirot smiled faintly. "No thanks are necessary, young man. Only remember, order, method, and observation will serve you in life far more than fear and impulse." The household exhaled collectively, the tension dissolving into the quiet of a calm Irish night. Poirot adjusted his hat, eyes scanning the horizon. "Mon ami," he whispered softly to himself, "the human heart is a labyrinth of secrets, and yet, eventually, all paths lead to the truth." And with that, Hercule Poirot, the little grey cells having triumphed once again, retreated to his chambers, leaving Dunmoragh Manor to its long-awaited peace.